find the spot. But we'll start right on top. I mean, there's 2 lines over there we'll go through quickly. On top of Kuf Lamed Vav. Having discussed the principles of Shefa, Omnam, however, we have another level of relationship totally, which is Inyan HaOyer, which is the principle of Oyer. And it's a completely different thing. Who the principle of Oyer is, Shezehu Rag HaOr Lavad. That this is only Ha'or, She'ein Boi Min Ha'etzem. A Ha'or that does not contain any of the Etzem aspect at all. So we have to reflect back. Because we said about Shefa, it's also, it's a oil of the Seichel. But this oil of the Seichel, the oil in Shefa, brings along the Mehus, the reality of the Seichel. In other words, it explains where this Seichel is coming from. In very simple terms. What's the basis of the Seichel? But in Oyer, there is none of the Etzem at all. There is no justification. How come there is Oyer? Oyer does not require this, and it's not given. And we shall see the reason that Oyer does not require it. Oyer is complete without that at all, completely. As an example of the oil of the Shemesh, the light of the sun, and as we said yesterday, this is quite a challenging presentation. Harei, Kuf Lamed Vav on top. Harei, so there behold. Again, we explained that the word Harei and Hine simply calls your attention to identify what you are actually seeing. Before I explain anything, I'm just identifying what you're seeing. But you already know. Harei behold. Ein etzem hashemesh mishpashet lehoyer. The etzem of the shemesh is not mishpashet, does not spread forth to illuminate. Although the shemesh illuminates the entire universe, as we said yesterday, and yet the shemesh remains where it is. Completely, none of the shemesh spreads out from itself. Kiyim, what then is it that illuminates the world of the shemesh? It does come from the shemesh. It is Ha'arot Selevad. It is only the Ha'orah of the Etzem HaShemesh. We'll go a little further and then we'll get back to where we left yesterday. She'einoi bibchinas mehus dover. This Ha'orah is not bibchinas, is not in the category of being a mehus dover, of some kind of reality, of an identifiable and tangible mitzvahs. Like in the case of Seichel even is a Ha'orah, but there is a mehus, there is something of substance that is being transmitted, to the extent that once the Seichel is transmitted to the Talmud has it on his own. He doesn't need the Mashpia anymore to substantiate it. It substantiates itself. The Ha'or substantiates itself. Whereas in the case of Oyer HaShemesh, the Oyer does not have a Mahus. The Raya What proves this principle, that the oil does not bring along a mahus, shekasher mistaleg ho'etzem, that when the etzem, which is the source of the oil, is removed, ukmoi, as in the example, b'shkiyas hashemesh, when the sun sets, ein ha'oil nimtzo, the oil is no longer present. He was oil filling the entire universe. All of a sudden, it vanishes, disappears. V'hainu, and that is lefi, due to the fact shehu rag ha'or levad, that the oil that filled the entire universe is only a ha'or, is only a reflection. It's not of the substance of the sum of the sum. Okay, as we started yesterday, the whole principle that the oil beziv hashemesh, that the light that illuminates the world, is really a sunlight. As we said, the way physically it is being interpreted, it's not light at all. The shemesh does not give light. The shemesh gives heat, or any kind of other energy. And this energy translates not in light, but in sight. It reverberates from the object. Thank you. And it hits and it comes to the eye, and it creates sight. This is not light. And as we said before, and I'd like if we should try and understand it. To understand it is impossible because it's a divine reality. But we are capable of relating to a divine reality. That's what the neshama is all about. As we mentioned yesterday, in the Torah it says the first day of creation, there was dark. And the reason it was dark, and he said, because world is dark. Why is world dark? Because world consists of the tangible mitzias. World you know by touch, not by sight. And we'll discuss in a moment, in Mitzvah Shem, if you make it a day, it'll be another day, the difference between touch and sight. Fundamental difference. The first day of creation, it says Cheshach. Vayem Elokim Yehi Oyer, Elokim said there should be Oyer, and there was Oyer. And everybody, the whole world stands up on its head, as we said yesterday. How there was the Oyer, there was no luminary? The answer is, Oyer was a creation, a divine creation in itself. Again, this will force us to try to understand what Oyer is. The one.
The question.
Your question.
How could the world be dark if there wasn't any world?
There was a world after the world was creation, the first day of creation. Eventually, we will identify darkness versus light, and it's a completely different. It's a phenomenal concept. With Neighbor Shilshilf. I want to introduce this from a perspective that we can all relate and understand. Number one, as we started yesterday, Oir emanates from something which is called an atzmi, an etzem. Etzem. Etzem means an essence. The whole concept of etzem is a divine concept. Let me explain. I've said many times before. A human being builds a table. He doesn't build a table. He puts together boards in a certain form, and it results in a table. He can't build a table. A table is a certain kind of reality in the world. That reality, the human being is not capable of creating it. He can conceptualize it, but he can't create it.
He cannot create the ideal. He can create a replica.
He can build something that resembles a table.
It resembles and serves as a table, but it's not the ideal. Is that the point?
It's not the etzem. It's not the etzem. Etzem, the whole principle of the whole concept of etzem, this is a divine contribution to the world. And as I said, I'm going to give an example, illustration of this, such that we can relate and understand. The human being himself, in contrast to all other creatures in the world. All creatures, the many creatures in the world that are alive and run around and do their thing. And the human being, besides, we all understand, stands unique. He is not even to be counted among the creatures. It's a different kind of a presence. Every creature has a certain definition. What does it do? What's its value and so forth. The human being is valueless. He's an anatomy, he's a reality itself. You cannot assess the value of a human being. As we said a while ago, that when the world was created, and everything in the world, all creatures were already created, at the end of the 5th day of creation, at the end, it's 5 plus the end of the 6th day, Friday afternoon, there was a whole world, everything was there, except for the human being. And we asked many times, the world with all its content, what value does it have if there's no human being? And everybody responded in unison, understood that there is no value to it. Comes a human being into the world, just his presence in the world changes the entire panorama, the entire value, the entire reality. Now it's a real world. Clearly it is not due to any action that he has taken, anything that he has done, just his presence already transforms the world into a real world. This is on a broad scale. Let's take it down to a narrower scale. A person owns a house. And we said, this person who owns the house may be a big home, and there are places in the house that he never intends to visit because he doesn't need it. I said, the attic and the basement and so forth. And yet, he is present in every crack and crevice of the house. Even the place of the house that he never visited, never intends to visit. How is he present? And how long does it take for him to bring his presence into the entire house, as big as it is? The house may be as big as Empire State Building. How long will it take for a human being to become present in the Empire State Building if it's his house? instantaneously. How can anything go in the physical world instantaneously? Clearly, it tells us, we recognize in our seichel, there is something that is not substance, and it's a presence. As we said before, that if somebody wants to make residence in a place that the human being never visited, he will not let him.
So we're talking about man in the world or a man in his home because we're trying to just talk about Atzmi?
Yes.
And we're talking about Atzmi because we're talking about Or?
We're talking about Atzmi because, Oyer, Hashemesh, yeah. So the human being has an Atzmi presence in the world. His presence in the world is not definable by his actions, his capabilities, or any of those aspects. His very presence occupies the entire reality. On a big scale, we just said it, but on a private scale, on a home, his presence in the home occupies the entire home, instantaneously. What type of presence is this? This is called Oyer of the Etzem. Let me go into the Etzem principle for a moment. Hopefully we'll get to realize how does the Etzem spread everywhere. Just as we explained, we understood that the human being's addition to the world changed the entire world. Not only the place that he occupies, the entire world is not a real world because the world has a human being. Even those places in the world that the human being never intends to visit, he cannot visit. They're too rough. They're not amenable to human life. Yet, it's part of the world that the human being affects by his presence. That is due to the etzem quality of the human being. What is etzem? So again, etzem is not a world level presence, and it cannot be explained in worldly terms. What can be said about etzem is the following: that etzem is the reality itself, as something of profound truth, real. This reality, it's a reality, the etzem, is of such truth, of such profound effect on its environment, that wherever it is, it permeates the entire environment automatically, instantaneously. It claims everything within its environment to itself. It affects it by its presence. As soon as a human being came to the world, he claimed this is a human world. As soon as a human being owns a house, this is my house. Not monetarily, but his presence permeates in the entire house. Etzem claims everything within its reach on an etzem level, not physically. Anything within its environment, it claims it to itself. This is a human home. This is not a house. That gets transformed in a second. A second is a long time. It's not even time dependent. The entire world changed instantaneously. Again, not time-wise, when Adam Rishon was put into the world. This is called Etzem. Etzem claims its entire environment to itself. Not to itself because it needs it. It transforms it. It brings the effect of its presence instantaneously into the entire environment. The Shemesh, the sun, is the etzem of light. Light, because of our exposure to the secular definition, will have a little challenge, but we try to project in the seichel. Light really is totally an intangible presence. Light is the opposite of darkness, the opposite of world. World is dark. World is known by touch. Light lifts the presence of the world to a level where you don't need to touch it. I want to discuss sight for a second in contrast to touch. Hearing is the same thing. Sight in contrast to touch. Touch, the effect of touch, how do you know that the object is there? You know it by your personal experience. The personal experience may be that you feel the nature of the object that you touch, the hardness, the sweetness, softness, whatever it is, and ultimately, altogether, you feel there is something there. Your hand does not stops its movement when you touch a table. Touch is something which simply has an effect upon your movement of your hand. That's on the lowest level. But on a higher level, even if it's not a question of movement, you actually identify the object by the effect that it has on your hand. That's touch. Sight, on the other hand, sight, you see an object in absolute clarity and conviction without ever experiencing the presence of this object. What are you seeing if you don't experience His presence? How come it's so real to you? How come you accept His presence if it doesn't affect you? And yet, you always say that in sight, not only you accept it, sight is more convincing than any other means of relationship. Sight is more real than in touch. How come? If you think deeply into your own intellect, you'll find the reason sight is so convincing is that in sight you identify in the object a certain level of presence, of truth, that touch doesn't even come near to understand it. In touch you know it from its physical effect. Like I said, the hand cannot move because the table stops its movement. That's an indirect knowledge. It's not knowing the thing directly. It's knowing its effect upon your hand. You're not knowing the thing due to its own reality. You know it due to its effect upon you, upon this environment. Sight identifies an object by the truth of its presence. So I said, this is a true presence. What is a true presence, conceptually? A true presence is only that which is divinely created, which has a divine presence, a divine right to be. That's a true presence. Sight relates to that level of reality. Sight sees things not because they have a physical effect, not because of their effect at all, but because there is a truth to their presence. Now let's take a step further. How does anything get the truth of presence? If it were not for its effect. A truth of presence is a divine gift. That is the only source for truth of presence. Sight relates to that level of reality, to that level of presence. Therefore, in sight, I can see. I see, and it's real to me. I don't have to touch it, because I see it from a different level of reality. It's a reality because God declared that as a reality, not because of its effect on the world and effect on my hand. That's what sight is. That's why sight is the most powerful, most effective aspect in all our experiences. That's why a witness, Hapilocha, is not a witness unless he saw. If he has any other evidence, he's not a witness. It's irrefutable evidence, but he's not a witness, because he's not talking about the divine truth, talking about an experiential truth. A witness has to bring a divine truth to the court, because this is a divine court, as we said many times. Sight is on a physical level, and in the koiches pnimi, in the koiches hanefesh, it is called chochmah. Chochmah is that quality in the human soul that relates and identifies the divine truth of existence. Not the physical and worldly truth, the divine truth of existence. Because of this identity, of the divine truth of existence, one can close his eyes and relate to the divine truth of existence. Doesn't have to see it, doesn't have to experience it on a physical level at all. Notice that when we daven Shemoneh particularly, we close our eyes. Close your eyes, you don't know anything. That's when you see the divine truth.
Shema.
Shema, likewise. Coming back to light, to the physical light of the sun. Light is not energy emanating from the sun. Light is a divine creation into the world. an add-on aspect in the world. The world on its own is dark, and light added light. God added light into the world, which means before you can only identify the world from a worldly level. Now you can identify world from a godly level.
If it's not emanating from the sun, what's the sun's relationship to it?
No, it is emanating, but not as a beam, not as physical. It is emanating. It is not okay. Just like your presence in your home emanates from you, does it emanate or it is your presence? Doesn't emanate. Your very presence occupies in time it is automatically. This is light from sun. The sun transforms the world into a light instead of dark. Because the sun is Etzem, and Etzem claims the entire environment and transforms it into its reality, into its presence, into what it stands for. And that's when the world becomes lit up by this present sun, because the sun is light. Nothing emanates. The sun itself illuminates the world. Not something emanating from the sun, although we call it oir. It is oir, because there is none of the etzem. But this oir is representative and attesting to the presence of the etzem. Just as ownership of the home, your presence of the home, it attests to the presence of the Yetzer. Again, let's take it down to the plain truth. Only a human being can own a home. Only a human being can own anything in the world. The idiocy that you can bequeath your property to a dog is idiotic.
Whoop.
Excuse me?
Whoop.
Woof. Totally idiocy. The dog does not have this kind of presence to own anything in the world. This is what Rebbe is explaining. The sun illuminates the whole world by its own presence, because it's an etzem of oil. It doesn't have to. None of the etzem comes out of it, but its presence illuminates, brings its etzem, its truth, to the entire world. And it becomes automatically visible. In other words, automatically you relate in the world to a different kind of truth, to the divine truth of the world, rather than to a physical truth of the world. And this is the interesting thing. The shemesh is light in essence, but none of the essence of the light of the sun spreads out to illuminate the world. It's a ha'ora of that. Okay, our time is almost up, but I just want to say, to start this in, what is the Indian that it's a ha'ora of the shemesh? The shemesh tells us, like I said before, sight relates to the truth of an object, not due to its effect, but due to its truth, to the divine truth. Sunlight tells you that there is such a thing as the divine truth in the world. This is the principle, that initially the world was dark, because that's what world is. And God added the union of light into the world, brought another reality, another level of reality into the world. Made the world accessible and known and realized at a different level. At what level? That is a divine creation rather than a physical presence. It's a complete transformation of what the world is. This is the infinite light. The sun is etzem behiri, is bright and brilliant. It is the definition of light. Sun is the definition of light. The reality, the etzem of light. Because the sun is the etzem of light, it's wherever the sun is present, the entire environment becomes like itself. He doesn't act to light it up. He becomes like the sun. Because an etzem claims its entire environment. Just like a human being claims the entire home, no matter how big it is. A step further, a human being claims the entire world. If not a human being, the world is not a world.
Can I ask something?
Yeah.
Was said before that when we close our eyes, then we really see. Why is it so?
Because when we keep our eyes open, the physical world tends to claim it's that this is the real thing. The Pasuk says, you should not follow your eyes or your heart. Your heart, okay, but what's the eyes? The eyes have a tremendous power over the person. That when you see what you see in your eyes, that begins to claim that this is the reality. And here is where we have to be very careful. It is sacred real, but we have to recognize that what we are seeing is a divine presence rather than a physical presence. The minute we start identifying the physical presence as the presence that we relate to, this is the end of this is where we lose ourselves. The physical presence becomes the attraction itself, rather than what it stands for, where it's coming from, and what it's there for.
This is what I want also to ask, that was explained that when we see the godly reality.
That's right.
That's the koyach hariyah.
That's
so
right.
It comes out that the person who is more refined has a stronger koyach hariyah because he's able to relate to the godly reality.
No, not in a strong. It doesn't have to do with a strong hariyah. Any sighting, if he has a weak eye, doesn't change anything. The fact that there is something there that he can identify, that he sees as a truth without having to touch it, that is Rikei Horiyah.
Right, but we said that the koyach hariyah is that he sees the godly reality. He must be some refinement to be able to relate to godly reality.
The refinement is that koyach hariyah relates directly to chochmah. The reason you identify it as truth is because you have the koyach chochmah. If not for chochmah, riyah would not be effective at all.
Thank you, PALTIEL.
Okay, you're welcome. Like I point out many times, you give a child anything in his hand, he sees it. What is the first thing that he does? Puts it in his mouth, because the chochmah has not been yet developed, so it's not real until he can taste it.
So even an adult can corrupt himself.
Absolutely, that's what the Torah says. This is where it gets confused. Becomes so attractive and becomes so enticing, and you forget about where it's come from, what it's about. Exactly right. All right. Call to that is it. All right, so this is it for this
To remain
morning.
on this call, press 1.